Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next in our series of HR Breakfast USA. And as you can tell, we're missing someone today. So, Toby, wherever you are, we miss you today, but we're going to have fun anyway, just us girls, aren't we, Callie?
Absolutely. We don't need boys.
Who needs them? So, firstly, I apologise to everyone that I am doing this from my phone today, and I am trying to keep it as straight and not wobbly as we possibly can. Many of you will know I've had a fiasco over the last few days, which we will not go into here, but go check out my posts on LinkedIn if you haven't seen them already. But we thought we'd be really brave today. And Callie and I thought, as we were minus Toby, what we do is do the Ask Us Anything questions to you all. So for those of you who have put some questions in, thank you. And it's been heartbreaking, heartwarming, and interesting to see some of the things that we've seen and we've heard. Callie, shall we start off with the whole kind of well-being piece for us as an HR community and some of the questions that we've seen there?
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect place to start and very timely for where I think a lot of people are at this point in time. Where does your brain go?
I think when I look at that, and I talk about this analogy quite a bit where stories actually, and I hear this frequently with some of my client base who are coming to me, which is like, why is that CMO guy over there got $3 million to redo a website? Slight exaggeration, you know what I mean? When we only redid it 2 years ago, and I'm asking for 500,000, that will completely transform our whole environment, and I'm being told no, I'm done. It's that kind of constant battle, not being heard, and that there's a lack of connection between, say, I think the consultancy world where there is support versus those who are in-house where there is no support and a huge weight on them in terms of they've got to perform these miracles. But if you're not going to meet them halfway, how can anyone do that?
There's so much that goes into it.
I know.
Where my brain starts, I think, is just like, I think I've mentioned this before in the episodes that we've had of you're not just fighting against every, interaction an employee's had within the company from an HR standpoint, you're fighting against every experience they've had with HR previously. And so the company is the same way, right? Even if you've been there for a while, odds are there are other people who have experienced other people's way of doing it. And whether that's good or bad or indifferent, you're still fighting against perception of what you've created from an HR department or what you've been restricted from creating, but also all of those other people. And so it's almost like we have to break down to a foundational level and restart building those relationships or intentionally start over that way before we're going to be able to build traction, which is tough because I think a lot of people are like, I have this great career. I've done all of these amazing things. I should just be taken seriously based on my credentials and my history, when HR is such a personalized thing. And there's those of us who get it and we're drawn to the field, whether we want it to be or not. And there are people who need to be kind of drug and brought up to speed. And it's so hard to intentionally take the time to build those relationships and to get back up to speed, rather than wanting to come in and start from this point of, I know what I'm doing, you should just trust me. And unfortunately, how we talk, how we think is just so different from what the rest of the business is doing most of the time that we don't get to just start and jump in. We have to go back and make up ground, often more than we even think that we should, if we're going to be able to move forward. I don't know. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, it's really resonated, on the way over, because I'm currently in Greenville in South Carolina, and on the way over this weekend, I was doing a talk for Disrupt HR, and I'm talking about a place where, the world of work is placeless. And what's really struck me, to your point, when we look at all of this, when we really take that step back right? You've really got to take that step back in order to move forward. The whole world of work in terms of offices. The first office, allegedly, when I first started researching this, was in the 1700s, and that was in London. And then, you had all the cargo and transportation companies, the East India Shipping Company, they grew offices, etc. And we started to get this huge environment, the office environment that started there. But when you look back even further, actually, it dates back to 900 AD. So what we're doing today and what we're trying to create is nothing short of reinventing the wheel. And here's where I've got to with all of this. If in the last 200 to 300 years, we've had this huge explosion of everyone going to the office, we've had people like Henry Ford who have said, yeah, okay, they've introduced the 9 to 5 because it's good for them. One of the things that I'm concluding is it's good for you as leaders. But what about you as people who've got to get on that subway? What about you as people who've now got to spend a shed load of money on childminders, on fuel that's through the roof? When we look at all of this and everything that's going on right now, HRs really are at the forefront of the workplace evolution.
Yeah.
I feel so strongly about that. So the root cause of all of this is well-being, right? And the HR's not being heard and what their predecessors have done. But ultimately, I think the question is, where do we want that business to be in 5 to 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
And let's work that back. And let's start putting faith in our HRs, because boy, they've got the toughest job on earth right now.
It's so hard because I think there are so many leaders who are still stuck in this personnel mindset.
Yes.
That they're there to make sure that you are taken care of. People are offered from a paperwork standpoint, right? People are offered benefits when they need to be so that you don't get in trouble. You have your steps in place so you can fire someone without getting in trouble. And it really takes a special, consistent, strategic approach to help getting that average person still stuck in that mindset ready to start thinking about what is going to happen with people from a 5-year standpoint. I think all of these companies who are out there laying off people, laying off talent acquisition specialists, just to kind of, I don't know, add a couple of percentage points, are really missing the boat of people have a lot of ability to look back and remember what happened. And when you're trying to get some of those key performers back that you just cut without really thinking about who, when, where, why, that's really going to, it's really going to matter. People care.
Yeah.
People have shown that they don't just, like, yes, we all need a paycheck, or most of us need a paycheck, but there's a lot of people who are a lot more concerned about where that paycheck is coming from now. And that is going to impact what the workforce looks like 5 years from now for those companies that just said, oh, this is better for our investors. And so this is the choice that we need to make right now. People get over it and move on. Maybe.
And when we think about it, I think, I'm certainly seeing a lot of an increase in this employee ownership schemes. Companies that are doing that kind of thing, hey, we want you to be part of this decision-making process. It's a bold move. It's a brave move. It takes a hell of a lot of work. And there are some organizations that I know of who are looking at doing that. The commitment and dedication that brings, to your point, the whole thing about where that money is coming from, then ignites the most incredibly dedicated and committed team.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those who may only be there for a couple of years, we know that there's much more of that, but they may boomerang around. Those who want that portfolio and fractional environment, why can't we still include them in things like this?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I'm a bit spicy today.
I love it. I think it's great. We do have a comment that came in from Teresa. I know you can't see it, so I'll read it for everybody. But leaders have never been shown another way to do it, which is where strong HR leaders need to find and use their voices in very strategic ways. 100%, Teresa.
Totally with you on that.
I know, Teresa, you have so much expertise in this area. I would love if you're willing to, what has been kind of the easiest way for you to gain traction and start finding that voice within the company, if you're willing to drop that in and share that, or wherever else your brain goes with it. Certainly appreciative of your perspective.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot in what Teresa just said. There are some leaders, and there are a lot of them actually, who want to make that difference. They really, really want to be part of the solution, but they're scared. And to Teresa's point, there are some very, very strategic and heavy hitting CHROs out there. I've had the privilege to work with quite a few who've gone fractional. But for those who have decided to, fight the good fight and stay in house and do all of that, again, what have you seen, Callie, from these HRs who have really gone to town on helping their leadership team to evolve, to help them get over the fear?
So, and that using the word fear brings me back to our Minneapolis Disrupt and exactly where Lisa Hannum from Beehive Strategic Communication, what she talked about was, welcome to the table. We're all in fear. And I think acknowledging that, and you can set yourself up for success by having the data to back what you want to do, right? You might know in your gut that it's the right thing to do already. That's one of the things that I get really excited about with what we do at Wanna Do is it's not that we're posing anything necessarily new. I mean, there are new elements to it, of course, but a lot of times you've already got that gut feeling that this is the right thing to be doing, or this resonates with your people, and having that foundational layer of data to back you up is so, so, so important. And so I think one of the things that I've seen that those leaders who truly are strategic do is they build the case, right? They don't just come in full blown, hey, this is exactly what you got to do and you just have to take my word for it. They take the time to build those relationships, to start laying the foundation, to start building those strategic partnerships within the company, so that when they've got what they need to make the case in front of people, they know that they've already got the team at least halfway there to begin with. So it's about being able to play the long game, but do it in a flexible, adaptive, agile way.
And I love that. The flexibility, the agility, I think is really important. And I guess when we're seeing some of the remnants of the challenges right now with the turnover of staff, the longevity of which we're keeping our people. And it's how do we maintain that momentum when the personnel itself might change every 2.5 years?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a quick answer to that. And is that more about accepting the fact that we will have between 40 and 60% of our workforce who are consultants in the next, some say 4 years, some say 5, some are saying 10, all sorts of different reports. But again, that goes back to when we're implementing these changes, it's okay that our workforce are geared in a different way because the outcome's the same, which goes back to what do you want that company to do? Where are you trying to take the organization?
Yeah.
And then working it back. And I often think about, the whole analogy, why did the railroads fail so much? because they didn't look up. They didn't see aeroplanes coming. And I almost feel that from the world of work, we're at that same analogy. We're all looking at the railroad going down here, and whatever's coming over here. There's so many organizations that they're just not looking up, and they're not looking at that right now.
Well, and I think too, especially right now when it's such a crazy job market, and there's, I saw an article about a company that had a position posted in December that got 1,000 job applications, which is still insanity, right? But then in January, all of these people decided 2024 is the year that I'm going to find a new job. And they had 20,000 applications for a comparable position. I think, the person who's not looking up thinks that's great. I can lowball people again, and I have my pick of the talent. The person who's looking up is going, okay, what's happening? Why has there been such an increase in people looking for jobs?
Yes.
And what am I doing to make sure that I minimize what that number looks like from an internal team standpoint? I'm really torn about this, the stat that you just gave about the fractional piece of it. I think there's a lot of reasons why we're going that direction. I think that those businesses who are looking up should be thinking about whether or not that's the direction that's going to serve them most effectively. And how do we build a team that, one, either uses that methodology to our best advantage and maintains that agility, or we are laying the foundation from a company standpoint to make sure that we've got some insulation when that shift really hits.
And here's the thing, and there's so many people entrenched on sides right now. It's got to be this way. We've got to do that. You don't have to do any of these things. You need to do what's right for your business. You need to do what's right for your team, for your client base, for where your business wants to go. And it might well be you are the ones that have your team for 10 years because you have got you've gone that employee ownership scheme route. That's meant everyone's gone, do you know what? As long as you continue to develop me, as long as I can do this, that, and the other, as long as we have a say in where and how this business goes, I'm down for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are some really cool places doing it right. I mean, my husband works for a company with 20,000 people in the United States that's owned by another company that's even larger. So they've got a ton of volume to take care of. But he, in his position, has been with the company for 10 years, not in that particular role, but with the company. And he's at, I don't know, most of the people that are at the same level as him have been there 15, 20 years because they've figured out how to incentivize that path forward, even when there isn't always an immediate upward transition. They've also figured out how to make it incentivized to actually progress within the company. You get a decent bump every time you do it, which keeps people motivated. You have growth opportunities to connect with those kind of, up at the upper echelons of the company. They've just done such a fantastic job of building that foundation where people do really want to grow with the organization. I mean, my husband started out in the lowest level right out of college, wanted experience to be able to go to med school, decided that this was an awesome career path that didn't involve needing to do that type of education.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so I am, for someone who comes and likes to trash talk the ways people are doing things bad and wrong, it's really fun to have such intimate exposure to someone who has figured out how to do it so right at such an incredibly large scale. It gives me hope that there are ways that we can continue to move on and make that stability okay. Not everyone wants to go out and build their own company or to be an independent contractor or fractional, whatever word you want to use. And the fact that we can have places that you can build careers without needing to do that, it's still attainable. Companies just have to keep their eye in the sky.
I love that. That is absolutely no mean feat.
Yeah.
How did they start to roll this out? And what have you observed in terms of the methodology they've used and, some of the things that they might not have done so well, but you know what? That's okay. Good on them.
Yeah. I think it really is about one, I guess they're in a medical related field. And so there is funding, right? There is also the understanding that what they're producing from a kind of product standpoint is going to need to continue to be utilized, right? Trying to be cryptic intentionally.
Yeah.
But I think really from an HR standpoint, they have been really, really specific at building the structure in a way that incentivizes people to grow and develop and see this not just as the job that gets me from today until 2 years from now. They've really been able to show that there are lots of different ways to grow and progress within the organization that isn't even necessarily a typical ladder sort of route. And I don't know, the part that's always been so impressive to me is giving that person the confidence that they're on the right path with that next step forward. It's never been a 15-cent raise or, you got a promotion, so now you're making $5,000 more. It's been the 15 to 30%, depending on how much increased responsibility comes with that. And so I think there's a lot of pride for the team that does stick around and grow with the organization of, wow, I'm being taken care of, I'm being valued, and my commitment is also being valued. I mean, they do a lot of really great things from a progressive benefit standpoint. I'm so grateful to be able to benefit from having their it's not quite Cadillac insurance in this day and age, but really is pretty close to what you can get from that standpoint. And so they really do look at the whole experience. They incentivize taking PTO. They have it cap at the end of the year, and that's a way that they're able to say, no, we know that you need time to rest and relax, and we're going to make sure that you are taking that time and that you have the safety net when you get sick through sick leave as well, those sorts of things. So they've really taken a good holistic look at what does it take for someone to be able to stick around, not burn out, want to continue to grow and evolve with the organization, and let's put that into action.
I mean, that's phenomenal. And, I think a lot of the things that we are going to see, and I've had several conversations, funnily enough, over the last month with a few HRs, particularly the fractionals, is, the need to change benefits and how benefits and that benefits portfolio now works. And, I know, for example, in Innovate HR, we've got something called the Travel Club. So it's a points and loyalty system. So the employer will pay points every month towards the employees' accounts. The employees can also put points in, which means when it comes to taking their holiday, a lot of the time, a huge sum of money has been saved because they can use their points. It can be used, say, as part of a bonus. My point to all of this is actually that's a great example of some of the new benefits that we're seeing coming out. Again, that's really important.
Yeah.
And, I think we're seeing more and more organizations talk about things like getting more down into the details in terms of, okay, well, if we're only going to have this workforce for X amount of time, how can we offer a benefit that is going to be good for them as a whole being, and for those around them who care? And what do we do if they want to take that benefit with them when they move on elsewhere? And I like that. I like seeing how the benefits world is changing. What kind of benefits have you seen recently that you think, do you know what, you just wouldn't have seen that 10 years ago? 5.
Oh my gosh, you just hopped onto one of my favorite topics.
I know.
Thank you. I appreciate you throwing me that bone. No, I think it's funny because I've been thinking about an article that I need to write of here's what I would do if I were a CHRO right now. And what stopped me is the thought about how it has to be personalized to that group of people. The last thing I would want is someone saying, oh, Callie said we should do this, so that's what we should do. But I am a huge benefit, or you have to work backwards. You have to say, what
Right.
is this barrier that's getting in the way of our team being successful or causing stress in their lives? And how do we minimize the stress? So one of my absolute favorite benefits that I think everybody should be offering, and it's an incredibly missed opportunity not to, is pet bereavement leave. One, it sounds really good. It feels really good. Someone likes to know that if they have that sort of significant relationship with a pet, where when that pet passes, they have that strong emotional connection where taking time off would benefit them, that they feel okay to ask for that and utilize it. I would imagine in the average company, utilization is a rounding error. I don't think that that's an exaggeration. I think that there are people who won't use it. And that's fine. And that's great. And there are the couple who will overuse it. For the vast majority, though, it's something that they maybe use once every 5, 10 years. And the opportunity to say, my company respects me in a way where I can talk about the grief that I'm experiencing, or I can acknowledge it, or I can even just step away and I don't have to talk to anyone about it, is such a huge, huge value add. I'm also a huge proponent of lifestyle accounts. And I think there's a lot of different ways people can use them that they don't realize it. It's not just about paying for that gym membership or, I don't know, getting a cup of coffee every once in a while. I think there's a lot of great ways that we can see, even with the benefits that we do offer, what are the barriers to utilization and how do we fix that? So an example would be vision insurance is great. Does that make buying a pair of glasses affordable for the average person who needs it? And are they going to be able to find it from a place that is actually best suited for their needs? Not necessarily. Maybe we're better off just saying, hey, here's a bank of money where you can pay and get whatever that store deal is when you need to. And then we know that we've either paid a significant portion of what that person needs, or at least are giving them something that rolls over. I think if we're thinking about, we're being the realist and we're saying employees only stick around for 2.5 years. So what's the point in investing in them? We've entirely missed the boat. And now we'll be like lucky if it is 2.5 years that they stick around, where the more we sort of say yes and rather than yes but, I think we create opportunities where we can be the outlier who does have people stick around for much, much longer.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. And I recall many years ago having a colleague and friend who I work with who was absolutely devastated. Her life were her animals, and two died in quick succession. A lot of people didn't understand that, but our whole world was just broken. So I absolutely agree. And having the ability to be able to put the benefits around the individual is so very important moving forward. And you're right. Isn't it funny how we're now talking about the fact that an organization who keeps someone for 2.5 years plus is going to be the outlier? And that's really, really hit me hard today. That that's so true right there.
Leo, please ask your question. Would love to have you do that before we take off here. I also want to read the awesome response that Teresa gave to us when I asked her to. So what I've seen work best is the real moments, inserting ourselves, building trusting relationships, and translating HR speak into business terms that leaders can understand. I see many HR leaders not feel confident or capable of asking those questions and having those conversations. So we also need to see ourselves as business leaders, just like others, so we can fight for the right thing to do on behalf of the employees. 100%.
100%. And again, I think it's what was really interesting for us with our organization in the last year. We've had more organizations come to us and say, can you commercialize our HR team? Can you help our HR team be commercials? And in some instances, it's actually the CHROs who are coming to us saying, can you do that for us? So I think Teresa's made some really good points. And those companies that don't that don't appreciate and aren't willing to commercialize their HR teams, I hope they are dead in the water. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because you don't deserve them. And that's my spicy little wrap up today. Kelly, what's yours?
Oh. We have to be willing to do better. We have to be willing to take on those battles. And we have to realize that, just because it didn't work here, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in the right place either, or in the next place either. And so either we need to be willing to recognize where we've maybe fallen short or where we've missed opportunities to be able to create meaningful change and figure out how we're going to work toward doing that. Or if we decide it makes more sense for us to transition someplace else, that we're willing to think about that and strategically set ourselves in the right path with that next endeavor, or else we're going to find ourselves in that same spot again. So I agree. I think there are a lot of leaders, especially those who are getting ready for retirement right now, who aren't willing to see HR in that light. And those are relationships that I would say, yeah, run fast and far if you have the ability to do so. But also, you have to be willing to build those foundational relationships and get people to where you're at if you want to be successful. And that's so much of what Teresa talked about in her post is you putting in that work too. We can't just expect, even if they've told us that's what they want from us, that they're going to be ready for that. We need to put in that effort if we're going to reap the rewards for our people.
Completely. I completely agree. And, it is a two-way street most of the time. And I guess, I was being disruptive and controversial with my last bit. But there are some that, you're just hitting your head against a brick wall. And it's recognizing that. It's recognizing that. I'd like to apologize again for my shaky and wonky screen. Business will be resumed as normal next week from my side, so I am sorry. But there was no way I was going to miss this. So I hope the content more than makes up for it.
Do we have a time for Leo's question?
Yes.
Awesome. I do if you do.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for putting it in the chat, Leo. As a result of the pandemic, substance overuse and negative behaviors have increased substantially. How are decision makers to empower their HR professionals to build therapeutic platforms both for their employees, the C-suite who are struggling? And when will there finally be some real momentum behind education and prevention? These are big questions.
That's a really big question. And firstly, Leo, thank you. It is a very big area of conversation right now from so many of the CHROs and fractional CHROs I'm working with. It's about bringing in the experts, to your point, to educate, to understand, because we are experts in that people piece. But when it comes to substance support and helping people overcome addictions, we need those specialists. And helping people to understand and identify it. I think that's the huge crux of it. When you look at, I know growing up, and I have a profound moment in my life where I sat around a table with probably 7 or 8 good friends, of which three have either lost relatives or close friends through alcohol abuse in the most horrific way. And in one instance, you would never know. Mm-hmm. So I think that education is about recognizing the signs, and helping those who need help.
I think the vulnerability piece is so important, and we need to be so mindful of how we ask for that in others, because there are so many people who have lots of really great reasons for not wanting to be vulnerable. But if leadership sets the trend of, hey, I know that I have my own personal battles that I'm dealing with here, I'm dealing with at home, whatever that is. You don't have to get super specific, but being able to say, hey, we're all human, which means we're all fallible, which means we all have devices. That is going to move mountains.
Yes.
For people being willing to come forward and say, hey, I need this specific help, or these are resources that would be beneficial. But I think even just saying, average US company has an EAP program. There are lots of better ways to approach things potentially, or better ways to get utilization. But even if that's the only thing that you can offer is an embedded EAP plan that came with something else, that still has really, really great resources for employees. And so having that leader who's willing to say, look, I've seen firsthand the devastation that happens when people don't get the help that they need. That is exactly why we offer this benefit. Here's how you utilize it without having to come to HR, without having to talk to a manager, without having to worry that someone's going to know that you're utilizing it, because it's important that you get that help. Or if you don't have that because you're a company with 5 people and that's not available to you yet, there are still free resources from a national standpoint that you can be saying, this is an incredibly valuable resource. It's really important to me that you know that this is available, and this is when you might want to use it. This is maybe not when you want to use it. But it's really important that we have those conversations, because usually when a person is really in the mindset where they need them is not when they're thinking straight and can start Googling what resources are available to me. You need to be having those conversations, laying that foundation. So in that moment of need, that's when that light bulb is able to turn on, saying, hey, there was a resource, I can talk to someone, or whatever that might be for that person. But I think it does start with vulnerability and being willing to admit that we are not perfect.
Totally. Leo, that's we haven't had enough time to cover what is a profound subject and topic. So thank you for taking the time to ask that question. I appreciate we have overrun. Callie, what are your final words for the day or the session?
Oh, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off of me from this conversation. So I'm just grateful for the chance to hang out with you and for the great conversation that happened even in the chat. So I think, yeah, it takes a village, and we're building a pretty cool one.
I love it. I agree. I think we are building a pretty cool village here. Thank you for everyone for your support and for being with us. More exciting stuff to come with our channel as we continue to grow this. But my final words are, don't be afraid to look up.
That's great. Thank you so much.
See you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.